The Toronto Raptors won against the Los Angeles Lakers 114-103. Hello and welcome to Raptors Today. I'm Savanna Hamilton alongside Sherman Hamilton. Now Amy Audibert will be joining us a little bit later. 4 straight wins for the Toronto Raptors on the road against some very tough teams. It's been 3 wins since our last show that we talked about. I believe we were teeing up the Phoenix game.
That's right.
We'll get there a little bit later. We got to talk about the Lakers because they held the Lakers to a franchise worst ever 12 points in the first quarter. That stat was brought to you by our super producer, Jake LaRue, behind the scenes. What did you make of the Raptors' performance against the Lakers, especially now that we're seeing the Raptors really come into their own, come into form again?
Well, I look at that Game 7. I think the Raptors came out with such a business-like approach. They didn't look at the record of the Lakers. They didn't look how the Lakers were playing coming into that game. They just knew what they needed to do to execute, and that first quarter was phenomenal. And we talked about this before. Scottie Barnes comes in, and he becomes the de facto leader. He dominates offensively, he gets it going with a lot of rhythm, and he did a good job of being consistently aggressive. But I think collectively, you add Fred back into the mix, they become a team that understands their purpose, how to go about it. And I just think the mentality is they are getting better as this season winds down. They're preparing for a postseason run. And I think in that position, it doesn't matter who's across from you. You got to execute. You got to do what you have to do in terms of knowing what you're trying to accomplish in any game. I thought they came out and did a great job. Like I said, a business approach. Dominated from the jump, continued to dominate that game, and made sure the Lakers were at bay the whole game.
And this is exactly what you want to see from a franchise at this point in the season. You know, there's been so much roller coaster of emotions throughout the season. You know, oh, we need to address the center position. We need a true shooter. Well, the Raptors are kind of proving that, hey, Gary Trent could be our shooter. Hey, we don't need a true center because we have flexibility in so many other positions as well. Thad Young comes in and he adds that seniorship and also just more of a physical presence. Kem Birch is healthy again and his presence is noted on the floor as well. So you see everything just clicking. And the crazy part is that there's still no OG Anunoby on the floor right now. So you love to see it, but we got to talk about Scottie Barnes. Like, this is now the Scottie Barnes show.
Right, exactly.
Because he had 15 points in the first quarter against the Lakers, and that really set the tone of the game.
No question about it. And I honestly thought, Sav, he was going for 40 against the Lakers the way he started. But like I talked about earlier, he set the tone. He was aggressive. You know, you put a smaller player like Malik Monk on him, it's mealtime. It's mealtime. He's going into the block. He's shooting over the top. You put a bigger body on him, he's able to attack. I just think Scottie is continually showing us that he's not only prepared for now, he's prepared for the future in terms of what he can be down the road. And his confidence is sky high. His ability to figure out and matriculate what's happening on the floor, dissect it, figure out how to approach it, and then execute, it's at such a high level for a young player. But he's just so impressive when he goes into that leadership role and starts to play that way in terms of dominating. Because he can do it in all facets of the game, he becomes one of those guys that the Raptors can say, let's play through the young man and let him do the stuff.
It's been really great to see his growth throughout. You know, he started off very strong. I feel like he kind of got quiet there a little bit, maybe lost in the mix. You know, there's other rookies that they're saying that, oh, maybe Cade Cunningham, maybe Evan Mobley is a bit of a stronger rookie, but I think he's coming out and really making his campaign. This guy was Rookie of the Month for February, and I don't think he's slowing down anytime soon, sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he also gets that in the month of March as well. But, you know, something that he's just been given has been opportunity to really show what he can do. Because when you have scorers on the floor, you have a Pascal, you have a VanVleet, you have a Gary Trent Jr. that's been phenomenal this season. You know, where does that put Scottie Barnes in terms of offensive options, right? He's now 4 or 5. But when you have an injury, he's able to step up to the plate and show, oh, no, I've just been sitting back and playing my role, but I actually have it in me to perform when you need me. Just call me when you need me. So, you know, you love to see that rookie perform. But now we're going to hear from the team following the Lakers game.
Yeah, listen, I thought he's done really well with it. You know, I thought there was probably a stretch, I don't know when, where he was getting caught up in that quite a bit. And this, back to Doug's question, this was part of the weirdness of it. I think that it was hard for our guys to score at the basket after a certain point in the game because of the contact, but it's good. Like I'm always saying, play through the hits and don't be looking for the call. You're still getting enough, clearance a lot of times to get a good look up. Even if you're a little off, get nudged off balance or hit a little bit, you can still, power through that stuff. And And I thought most of our guys did a good job. I mean, we coughed a few up. I didn't, we had some, we did get knocked off balance, didn't get a very good shot up down there. We had some of our turnovers were really bad ones, like way out front that were immediate baskets the other way. You wouldn't, no chance to get back and defend them. And that, again, was a little bit of not being assertive enough on the perimeter or being able to handle the knocks inside. But it's good for us to go through it.
Hey, Nick, you're 6-0 as a head coach against LeBron James in your career. Do you look at it in those terms, and sort of what's your reaction?
Well, I got about 20 more to get back to 500 in my total coaching career. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, for sure. I think that's why you allude to it. I think that a lot more bumping and bodying and stuff will go on usually in the playoffs, and you got to be able to, you got to be able to stay on your feet is the main thing, because if you're going down trying to sell a call, it's going the other way for a bucket, right? And you can't, each possession's so valuable. So, yeah, again, it's important to continue to work at this and get better at it.
I would say, of course, you seen him me in my era growing up. I would say this era of basketball, I've really just seen him a lot, how he dominated the league. And, of course, I say as a young player coming in, it's always like a hype game to be able to play versus him, I would say. It was a good game out there playing versus him. We did what we needed to do. I was on the floor, pushed me on the floor, and then I just saw him loading up, and I was like, oh, man. So I just tried to really just cover myself so it didn't hit me in the face, because he put a lot of power into it, caught it back, and threw it. I was like, damn. Really, I was just very locked into the game. Really, I wasn't really worried about it after. It was just in the heat of the moment, so I wasn't really worried about it.
Man, I mean, you just have to play the game, follow the flow of the game. If it's getting a little physical, then you have to match that intensity. If the ref calling every tick-attack foul, then, you have to, slow down on that. And, it's both ways. So they have to play a certain way, depending on how the refs are calling the game, and they have to, adjust to however the refs are calling the game, and we have to do that as well.
We got to look back now, Sherm, at a very impressive win against the best team in the league. The Toronto Raptors won 117-112 against the Phoenix Suns. The Suns have only lost 14 times this season, and now one of them's to the Raps. So let's focus specifically down the stretch, because it was a pretty tight game still. Pascal Siakam had some really great moments. Gary Trent had some really great moments. We'll get to that in a little bit. But what did you make of just how they controlled the fourth quarter?
Well, I like the fact that they did it from a defensive perspective. And to me, when this team is playing really well, they're getting it done on the defensive end. They're getting stops, they're rebounding, or they're turning teams over and getting out in transition and creating offensive opportunities. So I like the fact that they turned Phoenix over. And Devin Booker is going to be a big part of Phoenix's progression in the fourth quarter, especially without Chris Paul. And the Raptors forced a couple turnovers on him late alone, throwing that double team at him, cutting off passing lanes, and creating those opportunities for themselves. So their defensive focus against a team that is elite in terms of execution was very impressive. And I like the fact that they walked in there like, yeah, you're the best team in the league, but we got a plan. We've got something to accomplish. And the execution down the stretch, especially defensively, was excellent by the Raptors.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things where you see the growth in that aspect of the Raptors as well, because a lot of teams in those situations, even though the Raptors, I would say they had a fair bit of control over the entire game, down the stretch when it started getting close, some teams panic, some teams play hero ball. The Raptors just doubled down and made sure that they were focused on every single defensive possession, and it really spoke volumes. And one player that was really focused and locked in was Gary Trent Jr. He hit some key free throws, which is also a huge sign of how focused a player can be also down the stretch in the fourth quarter, because every single free throw matters.
Yeah.
And they ended up winning by not the biggest margin, but they still got the win. And I believe like 4 of those points were from free throws from Gary Trent Jr. So what did you make of his performance?
Well, he was excellent. I mean, a win is a win is a win, to your point, in the NBA. This isn't college basketball where quality of win and strength of schedule matter. this team went into Phoenix, a difficult situation. Even without Chris Paul, Phoenix had been playing great basketball to that point, and they went in there and got the job done. Now, Gary Trent Jr., he had been struggling for a while, trying to find his shot. Some shots looked like he was pulling the string, maybe aiming it a bit too much. I thought against Phoenix, he just let it go.
Yep.
He just played free. You know, shooters have to shoot the basketball. They have to continue to be confident that the next one is going in. And Gary Trent found that stride, and it was great to see. And then you see him just start to operate off the dribble. You see him operate off the side steps, the step backs. And then you see him just get set behind the three-point line, be the recipient of good passes, knock down shots. And then the defensive effort is there. So I just thought it was a great game against a great team for Gary Trent Jr. to step out and say, I'm back.
Yes.
I've got my form. I'm confident in my shot again. And he looked really good against a Phoenix team that had caused all kinds of problems for teams defensively.
But we were talking about after the All-Star break how, what was happening? His shot wasn't going in. And we were saying, well, you just got to shoot right through that. Shooter shoot.
Absolutely.
And he really showed up. He had 42 points against the Suns. Just bare buckets, yo. But Fred VanVleet, we got to talk about him because he actually made his return against the Suns. He didn't have on paper the most effective game. 10 points. I believe he had 8 rebounds, 4 assists. So, yeah, okay, it's still decent stats. I'm giving him a break on this one because, when you're coming back from, I believe it was like knee soreness and just a little bit of iffiness around the game, you got to shake off the rust a little bit. What did you make of his presence, just being a floor general, even though the numbers don't always reflect that?
Yeah, and we know this, Sav. I mean, there are some players you look at the stat line and it tells the whole story about a player. You don't look at the stat line when it comes to Fred VanVleet.
No.
You understand that he's going to have impact beyond that stat sheet, and I think that's the most valuable thing about Fred, and we've had the opportunity to see him evolve into this kind of player where we know we're not looking at the right hand of the column and saying he only had 10 points and saying, oh, Fred didn't have a good game.
No.
His leadership, his defensive ability, and just running the team, getting everybody confident, because prior to that, without Fred, you could see guys were trying to figure out where they need to step up, how they need to add more to the game to help the team. Well, Fred's there.
Yep.
Everybody can just fall back into place.
Yep.
Nobody has to force the issue, and he brings this calmness to the situation. And to me, it's no surprise Fred comes back and Gary Trent Jr. breaks out of that slump. There's, to me, direct correlation to that because of his leadership, because of his ability to set the table and just give everybody what they're supposed to get. Nobody has to work too hard because Fred's back.
Well, it's playmaking, straight up. It's facilitating the basketball. It's making sure the guys get their touches. Even if you're not finding your own rhythm, it's making sure that you're empowering your teammates to find theirs as well. Now, the Raptors, they won against the Denver Nuggets 127-115. Very impressive game for Pascal Siakam. He had 33 points. And, I feel like we're seeing him back in his pre-All-Star form almost. It was a little rocky for a couple games there, but now he's being super consistent, and that game really spoke to his performance as well.
Yeah, I think about that game against Denver. It's everything about a trap game. Second game of back-to-back, altitude, you're dealing without Fred VanVleet. There's so many issues in that game that are in front of you. Denver's sitting there waiting for you for 2 or 3 days. You just played the night before. It's just a tough situation. That's when you need your leadership to step up. And in the absence of Fred VanVleet, what we saw from Pascal Siakam was not only the ability to score with 33 points, but he also had 7 assists in the game. And you're going to need Pascal in those situations to be a facilitator or a playmaker while still shouldering the scoring load. So to see him step into that position and do what he did was very impressive. And he continued in that game through all 4 quarters to be a factor. That kind of balance is necessary.
Yep.
But we've seen Pascal develop this skill set. We've seen him over the course of the season be able to be put in situations and be successful with things we didn't expect him to have.
Nope.
So he's put the work in. Nick Nurse and the staff trust him. He leads his team, and he did a great job in that Denver game.
And who also kind of shouldered the load of scoring, but then also facilitating? Scottie Barnes again. He strikes again. He had 25 points, but then also, a significant amount of assists as well in his performance. And it just goes to show you just how much of a point guard and facilitator he can be when given the opportunity. Somebody else who also was given the opportunity, he had 17 minutes, was also Delano Banton. So between the two of them, they really navigated that point guard space in replacement of Fred VanVleet and Malachi, who wasn't available.
Well, you're right, and that's 15 assists between Delano Banton and Scottie Barnes. 10 for Scottie Barnes, 5 for Delano in the 17 minutes you mentioned. But with Scottie Barnes, what we saw was, again, the leadership, the ability to be thrown a big plate of responsibility and for him to just gobble it up. He did a great job in terms of scoring, rebounding, assisting, defending. He was excellent. Remember in that fourth quarter, the Raptors played a bit of a box and one, and they had Scottie Barnes defending Nikola Jokic late in that game. And Nikola Jokic had 0 points in that fourth quarter. So you think about Scottie's ability to be locked in defensively, to really make life miserable for the current reigning MVP in Jokic, who's having another MVP season. Shut him down, kept him out of the mix. Hence, Denver really struggled to find any type of rhythm offensively. The collective defensive effort gets it done. The Raptors forced 19 turnovers, scored 31 points off those turnovers. So their defense was locked in. And in a game where you do that, you get 24 more possessions overall.
Yeah.
Scottie Barnes was a big part of that. His defensive effort, his assisting, and he was challenged. Nick Nurse said, I'm going to have to use Scottie and Pascal as point guards, and they delivered in a big way.
And that's when you were seeing the beginnings of a very prominent player in this league. But, I'm calling this next part here the quadruple B lineup plus that
Give
young.
it to me. Give it to
Okay,
me.
ready? It's Boucher, Birch,
Yeah.
Banton, and Barnes, and then that young. What did you make of that lineup down the stretch that, by the way, they held Jokic to 0 points in the fourth quarter?
I tell you what, Nick Nurse rolled them out in the fourth quarter, and they answered the call. And again, when I saw that lineup, I said, Scottie's going to have to score everything. But what happened was they moved the ball so well, they had active body movement as well, and they made that Denver defense have to figure things out on the fly. But I like the fact that nobody in that situation that Nick had on the floor tried to do too much.
Yes.
They all played their position, played their role, and it came together so beautifully. Delano Banton was very big during that stretch. His ability to do things. Chris Boucher was excellent as well. I just think that you look at that group, and Nick rewarded them. He didn't go to his regular substitution pattern and bring Pascal back. In fact, he said that he kind of had to ignore looking down the bench because Pascal was giving that, hey, coach, when am I getting in type of look, because those guys were doing such a great job. And I just thought that they answered the call, got this game under control, and helped the Raptors close it out.
Yep.
It was so impressive.
And you got to give people that opportunity to do that as well, and to show that they can do that, and they're capable, because now we have a different look. And hey, maybe that's going to reoccur come playoffs. Maybe we do put the quad Bs plus that young lineup in the fourth quarter situation. But something that we also have to note, and you touched on it briefly, is Boucher. He's probably the unsung hero in all this conversation, because he's been playing pretty well, playing his role, and just really following the game plan, and that goes sometimes unnoticed, but he's definitely a strong performance. Now, just before we go over to Amy, we're going to throw it to a Kia Nurse feature that I had the pleasure of producing, and as somebody who grew up playing against Kia Nurse, it was awesome to also tell her story.
So I started playing basketball when I was 4 years old. I played for Hamilton Transway. It was a house league. We had 6-foot rims. We just tried to learn the game and really fall in love with it. And my sister played, so I wanted to be just like her. Spent some time with Ontario basketball for 2 years and started with the national team when I was 15 years old. And then I got moved to the senior national team and the Olympic team at the age of 16. And so from that point on, spent some time at the University of Connecticut and moved my way into the WNBA. I view my sister as the first role model for me to play basketball because she was everything that I wanted to be growing up. And then I got to play alongside Shona Thorburn, a fellow Hamiltonian, longtime mainstay on the Canadian women's national team. And she was just such a great role model to be around, to learn the game from. And obviously the GOAT in Canada basketball would be Kim Gaucher, who Smith before Gaucher, but she was the absolute incredible basketball player that she is. She spent so many years with the national team. The biggest barriers that I've faced in my playing career is just confidence in myself and confidence in my ability. A lot of times there were people who were doubtful about what we could do as women's basketball players, and growing up, it was always, awesome, you're gonna play basketball, but what are you gonna do after that? And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that you could play basketball and make a career and make a living out of it. And I've been able to live out my dream, and hopefully the next generation will be able to do that as well. The Canadian women's basketball world has changed immensely over the last number of years. We have become one of the top teams in the world, typically sitting at 4th in the world right now, and it's been so great to see the grassroots level continue to grow. The number of young women who are picking up basketballs in Canada and saying that they want to do this. We started Kia Nurse Elite AAU program for a number of different reasons. It started with my family. My dad was a big push in how we were able to get it off the ground. So we wanted to make it possible for young women in Canada to go play in the States, have the option to be seen by schools there, play with some really incredible talented athletes, and do it at an affordable cost. Mentoring the next generation of female basketball players is so important because basketball is so much more than wins and losses. All of these young women are going to learn a number of different life skills, whether it's communication, working with teammates, working with people you like and people you might not get along with, and being able to understand that all of these things are going to translate into the real world at some point. Being an athlete is not only going to help you become a great leader within our society, but it's going to help you become a good person and hopefully change the world.
Now we're going to head over to Amy Audibert.
Thank you so much, Sav. I'm out here in sunny LA with the Toronto Raptors as they look to finish off this 6-game road trip with a big win against the LA Clippers, who are without their 2 stars pretty much the entire season. Our guy, Kawhi Leonard, of course, and Paul George. Yet somehow the Clippers, they're still above 500 at 36-35, and it's because they've got veteran players. Amir Coffey, Nicholas Batum, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Marcus Morris Sr., just to name a few. They've done a great job of filling the voids on both ends, and the big question for the Clippers is going to be if either PG or Kawhi want to come back and how this team will adjust to those superstars. And one of the biggest guys to step up for the Clippers this season has been Reggie Jackson. He's in his 11th season. He's a veteran. He's poised. He was waived by the Pistons in 2020, picked up by the Clippers right away, and you can tell he really took that on his chest. This season, he's leading the Clippers in points per game at 17 and assists just under 5 per game. He also plays 31 minutes. He did rest earlier this week against Cleveland, which means he should be pretty fresh and ready to go for Toronto. When you look at the Western Conference standings, it's a pretty interesting positions for the Clippers. They feel like they've pretty much locked in the 8th seed. They are 7 games in front of the LA Lakers. So they're really taking this opportunity to rest some guys, especially those veteran players. Along with Reggie Jackson earlier this week, Marcus Morris Sr. was also a rest DNP at Cleveland. They have 11 games remaining and they play those out in a span of 26 days. So you get the vibe that this Clippers team's priority here is to stay healthy, get rest, and implement some new stuff for the playoffs.
As always, thank you, Amy. Now you can catch the LA Clippers game Wednesday at 10:30. Yo, these games are pushing my bedtime, Sherm. You can watch it on Sportsnet and listen to it on TSN. From myself, Savanna Hamilton, Sherman Hamilton, Armando, Jake, and Garth behind the scenes, and of course, Amy Audibert. Thank you for watching Raptors Today.